So, in the last 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of encouraging results on various vaccines that have been tested across the world. We've seen results come out from Pfizer and BioNTech, which have been working on a vaccine that requires a deep freeze cold storage. We've seen results come out from Moderna and the National Institute of Health in the US, and Sputnik V, which is the Russian candidate. So apart from these, yesterday on Monday, what we saw was the result of the Oxford University's vaccine candidate that it developed in collaboration with AstraZeneca. The interesting thing that sets this vaccine candidate apart from the other candidates is the fact that they have found two different efficacies. Now, an efficacy of a vaccine basically shows you whether it is able to bring down the number of people who would end up developing symptomatic COVID once they're vaccinated. And what the Oxford candidate has found is that if it gave a dosing regimen of the vaccine where, say, one of the doses, the first dose was half a dose of the vaccine, and then the second dose was a full dose, you ended up with an efficacy of about 90%, which is on par with what we've seen with the other candidates that have come out with their efficacy results. The second thing we've seen is if this vaccine was given as a full dose in the first shot, and then 28 days later we gave another full dose of this vaccine, we ended up with an efficacy of 62%. One of the scientists has said is that, the theory is maybe giving the first shot as a lower dose primes the body's system to actually accept a higher dose and develop a better immunity to the vaccine when you're giving it at a higher dose later. So that's one theory. Another expert, a public health expert in India, said, maybe it's the way that you see when you're operating a car, if you try to shift gears way too fast, you might overheat the car. And so if you do it a little slower, you're sort of building up to a point where you can increase the speed of your car, as opposed to shifting gears too fast and just overheating your car instead of actually seeing a change in speed. So maybe that's a potential theory. That being said, that this is something that is still being studied and being looked into by experts across the world. Covishield is basically the Indian version of the Oxford University's vaccine with AstraZeneca. Now, this is the vaccine that is being developed by the Serum Institute of India using a master seed of the Oxford University vaccine candidate. And they, at least so far, have managed to enroll about 1,600 participants in India in what they're calling late-stage trials to test for the safety and the immunogenicity, which is the ability of the vaccine to develop an immune response. And they're comparing this vaccine with the Oxford candidate vaccine to show that both the vaccines are equivalent in a sense. And therefore, if we manage to get enough data from the Oxford University vaccines trials across the world, maybe that data can be used to substantiate the data collected from the 1,600 participants in India to get an approval over here. Now, what Serum Institute of India has done in the meantime is it has been stockpiling doses. So it's been manufacturing doses of the vaccine at risk. It has managed to manufacture up to 40 million doses of the vaccine so far, and it has a monthly capacity at the moment to manufacture about 50 to 60 million doses of this vaccine. It is aiming to increase this capacity to about 100 million doses by February in 2021. what Serum is also planning on doing is looking at the encouraging results we're seeing from the global trials of this vaccine. They might approach the Indian regulators over here, the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. They might approach them in the next 45 days or so and ask for an emergency use approval, which would then, if given, allow this vaccine to be provided to a limited number of people, depending on how many doses we have. In the case of COVID-19, the vaccine development process has been fast-tracked around the world. So whereas it would take maybe 8 to 10 years to properly develop a vaccine in a normal scenario, we're seeing candidates come out with phase 3 results within the course of a year. So it's been really, it's been fast-tracked, it's been shortened, and it is trying to follow, all these companies are trying to follow very strict protocols to make sure that this doesn't compromise safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. But given the fact that we need a vaccine right now, as opposed to maybe 5 or 10 years later, we will not really get the answer to how long protection given by this vaccine lasts until we do follow-ups of the people that have been tested over a longer period of time. Pfizer and Moderna's candidate, they have very, very cold storage requirements. Very deep freeze technology is required. In the case of Pfizer, it is technology that probably no country has actually built up the capacity for. The vaccine that it has developed is it requires to be stored in temperatures of about -75 degrees, give or take 15 degrees on either side. So, you might need deep freeze technology that would be able to store the vaccine at -90 degrees to make sure that it is still potent, or anywhere up to 60, -60 degrees. In the case of Moderna, while the temperature that is required to store this vaccine is -20 degrees, which is something that India does have the capacity for, it is still something that India doesn't really have enough capacity for. One good thing about the Moderna candidate is even if you take it out of -20 degrees, you can store it anywhere between 2 to 8 degrees in which is a regular refrigerated temperature for other vaccines and other biologics. Yeah, I mean, you can store it at that temperature for up to a month, but at the same time, we don't really know if Moderna is planning on bringing this vaccine to India, whether it is in talks with companies in India that could help bring this vaccine here, or whether it is talking with the government over here. Well, even if it is, the cost of this vaccine, and for that matter, even the Pfizer vaccine, is on some level prohibitive for a country like India with such a huge population. The cost of a vaccine, of a dose of the Moderna vaccine, is anywhere between $25 to $37 a dose, right? So in the case of Pfizer, it's estimated to be around $19 a dose. Again, really expensive. At the same time, when we're looking at the Oxford University candidate, in our case, in India's case, it will be Covishield. And what Serum Institute of India has said is that they're going to provide this vaccine to the government at about $3 a dose. So that is the lowest price we're seeing for this vaccine candidate, for a COVID-19 vaccine candidate so far. On the bright side, Serum Institute has already at risk started manufacturing this vaccine. Given that it's about 140 to 160 million doses that we might see Serum having readily available once it gets an approval, that might mean that we'll have about 70 to 80 million people that could possibly receive this vaccine. This is all dependent on the quantity that Serum has available by the time it gets approval, and also what capacity India has in terms of cold storage, in terms of last mile delivery, and in terms of trained professionals to actually carry out a vaccination program like this. Initially, we're going to see a limited number of people in India getting this vaccine, and it is mostly going to be the priority groups that the government has been looking at. And this could be, this would definitely be healthcare workers, frontline workers, people in high-risk jobs that give them high exposure, and also the elderly, because they are among the most vulnerable population.